Caitlyn Clark officially done for the 2025 WNBA season, as she and the Fever announced on social media. The Fever and Clark saying that she tried to get back on the floor. It appears that she just ran out of time, not able to get enough confidence back in her body as the season wraps up and the playoffs are likely about to begin for Indiana.
Caitlyn Clark is done for the season, and this blow hits way harder than just one player going down. It's a nightmare scenario for the WNBA. For weeks, fans were kept on edge with cryptic, day-to-day updates that made it sound like her return was just around the corner. Tickets were sold out everywhere on the hope of seeing her back in action, and now refund requests are flooding the league office. The face of the league, the player driving TV numbers, ticket sales, and social media buzz, is now sidelined with a pileup of injuries that feels more like a failure in management than simple bad luck. The real question is, why did the Fever and the WNBA keep dangling hope in front of us while her body was clearly falling apart? Were they protecting business over player health? Before we dig into all of it, drop a message of love and support for Caitlyn Clark in the comments and tell us, can the Fever actually survive this and fight for a playoff spot without their biggest star? Let's break it all down.
Caitlyn Clark out for the remainder of the 2025 season, something we all think we knew was coming after what Stephanie White said earlier today. We couldn't be too sure until we see it for ourselves. And with this announcement from the GOAT's mouth herself, Caitlyn Clark won't be returning this season, nor if the Indiana Fever make the playoffs.
Her second season fell apart almost from day one, spiraling into an injury nightmare that no fan wanted to accept. Looking back now, the pattern feels painfully obvious. It all started in May, when quad tightness forced her to miss a preseason matchup. Just 4 games into the regular season, on May 24th, she strained that same left quad and was sidelined for several games. By late June, a nagging left groin strain piled onto the growing list of concerns. Then came the moment that changed everything, July 15th. In the closing seconds of a game, she suffered a right groin injury that officially shut her down. Fans barely had time to process the heartbreak before August delivered another gut punch, a bone bruise in her left ankle during rehab, extending her absence even further. What was meant to be Caitlyn Clark's shining sophomore campaign turned into a string of stoppages and setbacks, ending with her logging just 13 appearances for the entire year. A season that was supposed to elevate her status instead became a cautionary tale about how quickly momentum can vanish.
And it's a gut punch that basically encompasses an entire season of them. The Fever have lost so many players to injury, but obviously none bigger than Clark. And there was such a wait for this second season after her magnificent rookie season. And then, the anticipation of her possibly coming back, only for that not to happen, takes a lot of air out of the room, obviously takes a lot of energy out of the fans, and is a devastating blow for not just the Fever and the WNBA.
Every point on that timeline came with its own dose of frustration. The team stuck with the same day-to-day label for nearly every injury, language that kept fans hopeful and ticket sales humming. It painted a picture of a quick recovery, but the reality was anything but simple. When she finally came back from the quad strain, it was clear she wasn't herself. Her minutes were tightly managed, her numbers dropped, and she looked like a player trying to shake off rust while never being fully healed. People started noticing. Reporters and fans alike began to wonder if the team was rushing her back too soon. Even coach Stephanie White admitted that the Fever were using their West Coast road trip to evaluate her progress, a carefully chosen phrase that said more than it seemed. White also revealed that Clark hadn't been doing much contact work in practice, a quiet confirmation that she was still nowhere near 100%, even as she was logging minutes in real games.
Well, because Caitlyn Clark fans, I want to say Fever fans, but at this point, so many of you, including myself, has lost faith in everybody involved in leadership and in management and coaching. We've just sort of, I got to tell you, I don't have any more real good things to say about the Fever organization as of now. because I will contend that they have known this was going to happen and they did not want to tell anybody.
That's where the real fear of overcompensation took center stage. When one injury isn't fully healed, the body naturally shifts the workload to other muscle groups, a recipe for disaster. It's like putting a quick patch on a leaking pipe without ever fixing the water pressure. Sooner or later, something else bursts. Clark's groin injury became a perfect case study for this chain reaction. The stress moved from the weakened quad to nearby muscles, and the spiral just kept going. Through it all, the tone from the team stayed strangely positive. Fans would catch brief, hopeful glimpses. Clark jogging during practice, getting shots up before games, smiling with teammates. All of it feeding the narrative that her return was imminent. Local reporters echoed the organization's updates, framing it as if she was close to playing again. But experts know better. Quad and groin injuries don't just disappear overnight, and quick turnarounds rarely hold up under the grind of a professional season. The team's sunny updates and the reality of her situation never quite matched, creating a frustrating cycle. Each teased comeback raised expectations sky high, only for another injury setback to send everyone crashing back down, deepening the sense of letdown.
Two-time All-Star and the 2024 Wnba Rookie of the Year has been sidelined suffering a right groin injury during the Fever's 87-77 win over the Connecticut Sun on July 15th. If you guys remember that game, Caitlyn Clark put the team on her back in the winding minutes to give the Indiana Fever that lead. Clark also suffered a bone bruise at a later date during her recovery process.
The breaking point came on July 15th. In the closing minute of that game, Clark went down again, this time with a groin injury on the opposite side. And just like that, her season was over. In hindsight, it was the moment that revealed the full picture. For months, she had been grinding through rehab, making partial returns, and never giving her body the true reset it desperately needed. Then came the cruel twist. A bone bruise in her left ankle during rehab, turning an already painful season into a reminder of just how fragile her situation had become. By that point, fans had stopped buying into the optimistic updates. They could see it for what it was. Clark had been playing through a compromised season, her body running on fumes long before the final collapse.
Caitlyn has worked so hard throughout this time, doing everything possible to recover and return to the court, but ultimately, time is not on our side, said Indiana Fever COO and GM Amber Cox. While we will continue working with Caitlyn and provide her with every resource we have available, there is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return, and her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. We are looking forward to having her back at full strength to start the 2026 season. Clark appeared in 13 games during the regular season, averaging 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, while helping lead the team to the 2025 WNBA Commissioner's Cup title.
Her own words shattered whatever optimism was left. She revealed that she had spent every single day in the gym trying to claw her way back, and when asked how she felt about the result, she said, "Disappointed isn't a big enough word." That level of honesty landed like a gut punch, far more powerful than any polished team statement. Clark had been fighting behind the scenes, pouring everything into saving her season, while the public narrative made it seem like she was just days away from being fully healthy. The reality was far harsher. One injury after another stacked up until they finally forced her off the floor, leaving the Fever without the very player who had turned the league into must-watch TV in real time.
And this is what Caitlyn wrote. I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. This has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way fans continue to show up for me in the Fever brought me so much joy and important perspective. I'm so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through the adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot in the playoffs.
And there was still another layer to this story. As Clark's injuries stacked up, people started noticing just how much physical punishment she was taking night after night. The league had marketed her as the face of women's basketball, but her body was paying the price for that spotlight. Fans started asking the uncomfortable question: If she was already battling this many injuries, why did it seem like no one was stepping in to protect her on the court? That's when the anger shifted. It was no longer just about the injuries themselves, but about how she was treated during games and the lack of whistle protection from referees who seemed to let it slide. What began as concern turned into a much larger conversation, a full-blown debate about the officiating, the physicality she faced, and whether the WNBA was doing enough to safeguard its most marketable star. This wasn't just about one player's health anymore. It became a story about on-court bullying, referees under intense scrutiny, and the league's risky bet on its golden goose. A gamble that may have cost them the very thing they were trying to build.
Well, it all started last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlyn Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail for what's going on.
Fans and media alike started connecting the dots, and what they saw was alarming. Game after game, Clark was taking heavy contact, yet the whistles stayed frustratingly quiet. For a player of her stature, the one carrying TV ratings and ticket sales, many expected officials to adjust and offer some level of protection. Instead, every nationally televised matchup seemed to include at least one moment where a blatant hard foul went uncalled, and the clips spread like wildfire across social media. The same question echoed over and over. Why is the league's biggest star being allowed to take this much punishment with so little response from the referees?
DOJ and FTC to investigate WNBA's misleading practices. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. So we are here now. We are here now. And what's crazy about all of this is that, guys, this is I'm not going to come on here and say that they're going to lose, because if there was an investigation going into this team, they're not going to lose this investigation. Oh, they're going to win. Whoever is representing Caitlyn is going to win.
This wasn't wild speculation. There was hard evidence. Game footage showed Clark getting hit, shoved, and outright bullied nearly every time she stepped on the floor. Those clips became rallying points for the outrage. Fans slowed them down, frame by frame, pointing out the arm slaps, the lowered shoulders driving into her chest, and the kind of contact that went far beyond the usual let them play approach. It reached a point where the conversation shifted completely. For commentators, highlight shows, and even casual viewers, it wasn't just about missed calls anymore. It became a debate about whether Caitlyn Clark was being officiated under a different standard altogether.
And last year, I noticed how much it was just Caitlyn Clark. Caitlyn Clark was taking all the hits. Caitlyn Clark was taking all the abuse. But this year they've added Sophie Cunningham. She gets more flagrant fouls on her than anybody in the league besides Caitlyn Clark. And Aaliyah Boston, she's been taking hits as well. But the worst thing is the consistency. So they don't call flagrant fouls, or most of the time, Caitlyn Clark could be held for an entire game at a time. They don't call fouls. They don't call common fouls.
This wasn't just a conversation about fairness. It had very real consequences. Every uncalled bump, shove, and hit piled extra stress onto a body that was already hanging by a thread with quad and groin issues. Add in the relentless contact of live games and the eventual ankle bruise she suffered during rehab, and you get the perfect storm that made a season-ending breakdown feel almost inevitable. No one can say for certain that there was a deliberate cover-up, but the pattern was impossible to ignore. The vague team updates, the cautious language, and the growing wave of public frustration painted a clear picture. Fans knew something wasn't right, and they weren't being told the full story.
Against Breanna Stewart, she goes to the line 14 times. A'ja Wilson goes to the line 13 times. And Aaliyah Boston can't play 20 minutes in a game without being on the bench in foul trouble. That's another problem that we're dealing with. But like I said, this year, it's not just Caitlyn Clark. If you wear that Indiana Fever jersey, consider it done. The refs are not going to be fair, and they are going to cheat and do whatever it takes to do what the higher-ups say.
Critics quickly connected the dots and tied the whole situation back to money. The Fever and the league stuck to that day-to-day label for months, keeping hope alive even as her return kept slipping further away. Meanwhile, sold-out road games went ahead as scheduled. Arenas opened extra seating to meet demand, and ticket prices kept climbing. So when the official announcement finally came that Clark was done for the season, the backlash was immediate. Fans felt like they'd been strung along, promised a comeback that was never realistic. The narrative shifted hard. It started to look like business decisions, full arenas, and TV ratings were given priority over honesty and transparency about Clark's health.
For the last 2 weeks, Stephanie White knew where this was going to end up. I would say for the last month or so, they kind of had a feeling where this was going to go. The main issue, another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. Another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. And if you don't call that a lack of transparency, I don't know what to call that.
That perception isn't just noise. It's the part that really stings. When you zoom out, you can see how all the mixed messaging built a storm of mistrust. On one side was the polished marketing machine selling Caitlyn Clark as a once-in-a-generation superstar. On the other side were the reality checks, the hits she kept taking, the unclear timelines, and the mounting injuries. Fans didn't just watch games, they connected the dots, concluding that the league kept things quiet, and refs kept their whistles down, all to keep the cash flow and TV numbers alive. Whether or not that was the league's intent almost doesn't matter anymore. The credibility damage is real. And right now, credibility is everything for the WNBA. Clark's presence had supercharged ticket sales, boosted TV ratings, and brought mainstream attention at a level women's basketball hadn't seen in years. Losing her, not just to injury but under a cloud of public criticism, was the one scenario the league couldn't afford. Now the broadcasts feel a little less electric. Playoff races have lost some of their spark, and the Fever's title hopes seemed to vanish the second the announcement went public.
They could have easily said 2 months, 1 to 2 months, be evaluated in the next 6 weeks. Instead, they played this day-to-day, game-time decision, probable, questionable nonsense for the last 8 weeks, and that is why fans are so pissed off for the most part. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I know if they were upfront and didn't BS us, people wouldn't be that angry at the organization, at least not as angry as they are now.
And that leaves one massive question hanging over the entire league. With Caitlyn Clark sidelined and the Golden Goose Gamble blowing up, what happens now? All eyes swing straight to the Indiana Fever, a team suddenly forced to prove it can stand on its own without the superstar who turned them into a national spectacle overnight. The pressure has never been heavier. The Fever sit at 21-20, clinging desperately to the 8th and final playoff spot, with just 3 games left on the schedule. The Los Angeles Sparks are breathing down their necks, just a game and a half back, meaning every single quarter, every possession, could decide whether Indiana survives into the postseason or spends October watching from the couch. Without Caitlyn Clark, the conversation is no longer about hype or headlines. It's about grit, execution, and finding a way to survive long enough to keep their season alive.
The Fever's still likely to make it into the playoffs, and I do continue to credit their resilience and what they've put up with and what they're capable of, and they will go down swinging when they do eventually go down, because I just don't think they have the talent to stay up at this point. But I mean, Caitlyn Clark said it, disappointed is not a big enough word, and I feel it's fair to say that for any right-minded person, that's the word on everybody's mind, getting the news that CC's season is indeed done.
That sense of urgency has pushed Indiana's roster to lean hard on the leaders still standing. Kelsey Mitchell has turned into the heartbeat of the offense, carrying the scoring load and keeping the Fever competitive when things stall. As the steady veteran, she knows how to calm a half-court set, take control of possessions, and manufacture points when the playbook breaks down. Inside, Aaliyah Boston, now a 2-time All-Star, has been just as critical. She's the defensive anchor in the paint, pulling down boards, protecting the rim, and forcing double teams that open up looks for everyone else. Around them, the role players have embraced the moment. Lexi Hall has carved out a reputation for her perimeter defense and her willingness to set a physical tone that gives Indiana its edge. Meanwhile, Sophie Cunningham's combination of toughness and timely shooting has been a steadying force when games start to spiral out of control. They might not all dominate the box score, but as coach Stephanie White has said, they've become the stabilizers, exactly the kind of players a team clinging to a playoff spot needs when its superstar is sidelined.
It's unfortunate that we were robbed of Caitlyn Clark's sophomore season. She came out with a triple-double against the Chicago Sky. Triple-double first game of the season. Returned from injury, 32 points against the New York Liberty. The best 45 seconds in the WNBA this year. Pull up three, bang. Pull up three, bang. Pull up three, bang. 9 points in 40 seconds.
The Fever have also turned to smart, practical roster moves to keep their season afloat. Hardship contracts and key veteran signings, adding experienced names like Odyssey Sims, Chloe BBY, Ari McDonald, and Shaw Petty, have filled crucial gaps whenever foul trouble or fatigue stretched the rotation to its breaking point. These weren't splashy signings meant to grab headlines, but they gave coach Stephanie White the tools she needed to keep Indiana competitive night after night. White herself has been the steady hand guiding this group through the storm. She's mixed and matched lineups, redefined roles, and kept her players locked into the idea that they are more than just a team waiting for Clark to come back. Her message has been clear. This isn't about surviving. It's about proving they can still fight. That approach has paid off. Mitchell's scoring punch, Boston's dominance inside, Hull's gritty perimeter defense, and Cunningham's toughness have made the Fever a team that refuses to fold, even when games hang by a thread. With the reinforcements brought in on short-term deals, Indiana has managed to stay in the playoff chase and keep the Sparks at arm's length. This chapter isn't about copying what Caitlyn Clark brought to the floor. It's about forging a new identity, one built on depth, resilience, and collective effort. The Fever now have a chance to define their season on their own terms, proving that even without their brightest star, they can still be a team that fights to the final buzzer.
This is on your head, Kathy Engelbert, and the rest of the WNBA Players Association executive leadership who failed to hold officials and players accountable for the barbaric style of play the Fever and Caitlyn Clark have had to endure this year. Kathy, resign.
If Indiana manages to grab that playoff spot, it won't be because the schedule did them any favors or because their opponents let up. It will be the result of veterans stepping into the spotlight, role players refusing to fade away, and a roster that found its identity in the middle of chaos. That kind of payoff is exactly why fans watch. It's living proof that even without Caitlyn Clark, the Fever have the resilience to stay relevant in the postseason conversation. But this year's story stretches beyond Indiana's survival. It's also about what Clark's injury exposed on a league-wide scale. As the Fever fought through their final stretch, the WNBA was left staring at a bigger, harder question. How did this situation spiral the way it did, and what does it say about how the league handles its brightest stars? For many fans, this season feels like evidence that communication broke down when it came to player health, and that transparency wasn't always the priority. Still, Indiana's front office insists that Clark's long-term well-being has been at the center of every decision. Fever GM Amber Cox has already said the team is focused on having Clark fully healthy and ready to dominate in 2026. That's a clear signal that the organization is choosing recovery over short-term gains, even if it means riding out a turbulent season. In the meantime, players like Mitchell, Boston, Hull, Sims, and the rest of this battle-tested roster are refusing to quit. They're keeping Indiana's season alive and giving fans a reason to believe. The Fever aren't just playing to sneak into the playoffs. They're playing to prove that this franchise can fight through adversity and still matter. Now it's your turn. Drop a supportive message for Caitlyn Clark in the comments and tell us what you think. Can the Fever finish strong and claim that last playoff spot without her? Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on all notifications so you never miss a single update. Share this video with another basketball fan who needs to be part of this conversation. and click the video on your screen right now for even more WNBA coverage. We'll see you there.